we're talking about is your brush tool in complement with your layer masks and how those two things can work together to create much more interesting looks than what you're used to. So today I've given you two files you need to look at. The first one is the brushes and masking. That's a Photoshop document. You can double click on that and open the document. The second one is a smoke brush file. It's an ABR file, a brush file. If you double click on that, that should install into Photoshop. If it does not, when you double click on it and it says choose application on Mac, you go to application, Photoshop, Photoshop again, then hit open. That should install it onto your computer. But you should be able to just double click on it and it goes right in. If you want to double check to see if you got it, hit B on your keyboard for your brush, scroll to the bottom of your brushes here, and see if you've got smoke brushes. That's what we're looking for. If you've got that, you're good. If you've got 5 of them, click on them and hit delete until you've only got 1. So what we're going to do today is we are going to layer mask this guy out, and then we are going to utilize that layer mask to create a much more interesting look for the overall background of this guy. Now there's a few things we need to do today to be successful with this. First, we need to make a good selection of him, and then we are going to work in a slightly destructive manner. So by doing that, I always want to retain my old pixels, duplicating and copying layers so I have my original. So keep that in mind as we go. So starting in your layers panel, you have one layer that's unlocked today called worksheet. I would like you to duplicate that layer. Command or Control J is the shortcut for that. And then rename that new layer model. That's the image we're going to work on. Because I know I'm working in a destructive manner, I want to save this original. So I'll lock that. I'll turn the eyeball off on it for the time being so that I'm not worried about it. It's there. I know it's there if I need to go back. Select the model layer. Now we're going to play with a different tool today. I'm going to hit W on my keyboard and find my object selection tool. Now the object selection tool works in a bunch of different ways. It may take a minute to load up and find your image. Now the object selection tool allows me to hover over certain areas, and it's going to read based on color and shape what it is I'm looking to select. It'll light up pink those areas. Up in your options bar, there are options for how it selects. So before I begin, notice that I can click, hold, drag over top of this image. It'll take it a moment to kind of figure out what it's supposed to select, and then it'll make a selection over what it thinks I was trying to select. And you see here, it does a pretty good job. The background is yellow, the coat's yellow. Sometimes that will create issues if the colors are very similar, but it did a pretty good job here. Now I'm going to hit Control or Command D real quick and go back though. In the options bar, there is an option up here that says Select People. Click on that. And if there are multiple people in this image, it'll show those people. So I'm going to click on this guy right here. It's going to ask what I want to select. The entire person? Do I just want his hair, his eyebrows? Do I just want his glasses? It'll get very specific in here on what I want to select. But I want the entire person. So when I hit that, hit Apply. It'll take a moment and then it'll select what you just selected. Now this tool is very seldom perfect though. So if you look at this, it looks good, but if you notice down here at the pant level, it's missed an area. So this is why this tool is good, but it's not my favorite tool for it. The quick selection tool will allow you to fix anything. So if you grab your quick selection tool and just go over this belt area, it'll select that as well. So once you have a good selection of this guy, we need to do a couple of things. Most of the time when cutting people out, I tell you to hit a layer mask like this. And that is a good practice, and that is a non-destructive workflow. By saving those pixels, I can always bring them back so I can see the original. However, to do the effect that I want to do today, that's not going to work. I need to physically delete these pixels from the outside, and this is the destructive method. So to delete the outside pixels, I need to select the outside layer. So if I hit delete right now, it deletes him. That's not what I want. Control Command Z. I want to flip this selection. So I'm going to go to Select, Inverse. That'll flip what I have selected, and when I hit delete now, it'll just delete the background of this model. Good. Hit Command D to deselect. Now I'm going to move him over to the right a little bit because we're going to need some space behind him. I'm also going to need 2 of this to do the effect that I'm looking for. So where it says model, I want to duplicate that layer. Hit Command J. So the model layer, the bottom layer, we're going to leave the same. But the duplication we're going to rename to effect. And we're going to put that effect layer underneath the model. Now, you can't really see anything happening here because we have 2 of the same thing, right? Only if we get rid of both do they go away. I'm going to turn off the effect just for a moment. I want you to go down and select the worksheet layer. Now, we're not going to do anything to it, but by selecting it, any new layers we make will show up just above this. So I want to create a new layer, layer 1, and call this background. Now, looking at this background that we have for the image, we see this checkerboard pattern, and this is invisibility or transparency, opacity, where we can see all the way through it. So we want to affect that and change this look. And I'm going to add an adjustment layer to do that. So in my adjustment layers, that half black, half white circle at the bottom, I'm going to look for the option that says gradient. And I want to create a gradient in this background. Now, what gradient it creates is going to be dependent on what you have selected previously. I want to go into the basic gradients and choose the black to white gradient. So you can see that there. Now, the gradient that I currently have is black and white. It's in a linear mode, meaning it's going straight down and to the left. I can alter this gradient by double-clicking right here on the color and changing the color of this gradient. So I will click on this left stop and I will change the color of this gradient. Find me a basic yellow color. And then on the right hand side, I'll click on this stop and I'll change that to a white color. So that gives me a yellow to a white fade. That's what I'm looking for. Hit OK if you've got that. So you can see it right here, looks pretty good. But this is still a linear gradient. I want to adjust this to be a radial gradient where I have a dot of a color. Now, I currently have the yellow in the middle and the white on the outside. And I actually want to flip this. I want the opposite of that. I want the white in the middle. I'll click on the button that says reverse and that'll give me that look. So I've got the white in the center. If you wanted to do this another way, you could just change which color was where on this bar. Now I also want to scale this up. So I'm going to grab the scale and I'm going to make this dramatically bigger. I want to be able to see the colors, but I don't want to see them strongly. So I'm going to go to about 200 or so, and that'll give me the look that I'm looking for. If you want to adjust where this gradient is, hit G on your keyboard and move it like that, and that'll give you that look as well. So there are ways to play with where this gradient is. So I'll grab from this corner and drag up and to the right so it kind of crosses around him and gives me that full color right at the end here. Get my move tool to lock that in. So that's the look I'm looking for. That's my background. This is a subtle fade. Sometimes they call these corporate gradients where you can just barely see the color changing. Alright, so we've got our 2 model images, and I want you to turn the model himself off for the time being and select the effect layer. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make kind of a smoky haze coming off of this guy. And in order to do that, I need his area, his coat, kind of pulled off to the side to give me the color that I want it to be. You'll see what I mean in just a moment. So up at the top, with that effect layer selected, I want you to go to Filter, and then I want you to go to liquify. Now this is why we had to work in a destructive manner, because if we used a layer mask, this would not work. So this opens up an entirely different interface than Photoshop. You have different tools on the left, different panels on the right. Feel free to experiment with these. You can do a lot with them. There is an option here that says Face Aware Liquify. That's one of my favorite tools. I'll pull a picture of one of my students up and make their eyes real big or real small. Play around with it. But for the lesson today, we just want this very first tool, the forward warp tool. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click, hold, and drag on the left-hand side of this guy, kind of pulling out the area of his coat, the color of his coat. And I'm going to pull it up from here like that. Once I've got some basic pulls on this, I've got it kind of away from where he originally was. I'll make my brush a little bit bigger and I'll make bigger pulls. What I want to do is cover this whole left side of this document with this gold. So I'm just going to go through that real quick. All right, so I'm looking for a look kind of like that. So when you get this area done, I want you to hit OK on your screen, and that'll pull you back into Photoshop. You'll see that big smear going off to the left. Now, currently, this is not a good look, right? It's very clearly not what it's supposed to be. So we're going to do some things to kind of give this the look that we want. And this all comes down to layer masks. Layer masks are key to this. So I'm going to zoom in on my layer masks real quick, and we're going to look at what we do. So on the effect and the model, I want to create a blank layer mask on both of these. Now to do this, I'm just going to come down here, click on layer mask, and it's just going to give me a white layer mask. Remember, white means we can see it, black means we can't. So currently I can see both of these perfectly clearly. If I bring that forward, I can see him just fine. So I'm going to click on the effect layer mask right here. So I have to have the layer mask selected. Be very careful in this next step. If you do this wrong, you're going to see the color black. If you see the color black, you've done it incorrectly. Underneath your gradient tool, G, you have your paint bucket tool. I want to have black as my foreground color, and I'm just going to click one time into that area, and on that layer mask, it turns it completely black, meaning I can't see anything on that layer. I'll bring my model back up, and it looks like I've done nothing, but it's still there. Remember, this layer mask is just covering it currently. So being black, it covers it. So I'm going to hit B to get my brush, and in my brushes, I'm going to go down to my smoke brushes and look for my different smoke brushes. I'll select the first one. Now before I begin looking at this really, my brushes are always going to come in very vertical like this. It's always going to be the smoke rising from the bottom to the top. To create the effect I want to create, I need my smoke going to the left. So I'm going to have to adjust this every time I pick a brush. This compass up here, I'm going to grab this little arrow and I'm going to point it up and to the right just a little bit. Smoke rises, right? So I want it to go up and to the right just a little bit. Alright, so when I've got that, I'll make sure the sizing is right. So I'm at about 1400 pixels for mine. You can go a little bigger or smaller. Now I've got white as my foreground color because I'm trying to bring back some color. So let's just stop for a second and make sure we understand what is happening here. On the layer mask that is black, I am painting white. So just to show you in the realest sense what this is, I'm painting white on my layer mask. Okay? Now, by doing this, what I'm going to do is be able to bring back some of the visibility that was hidden here. So when I click, I get this nice little smoke texture coming through. The more I click in the same location, the denser the smoke's going to be, but you don't want it to be too obvious, right? I don't want to click a bunch of times. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click twice for every time I do this. 1, 2, without moving the mouse. Now, a lot of people will use this same brush and just go down and do it like this. But what do we start to notice? A repeating pattern, right? Your eye is trained to see repeating patterns. Put it this way, we've all sat in a doctor's office before, staring at the floor for hours waiting for that doctor, and noticed that that tile right there is the exact same tile as the one over down the way. These repeating patterns will draw your eye in a very negative way. So I don't want to repeat this smoke at any point. So I'll double click on it to create the first one. And then I'm going to go back and get a second smoke brush. About the same size. Make sure you change the angle. And I'm going to double click on that one. Doing the same again. Getting another one. Changing the angle. Changing the size to be about the same. And clicking to create another one. So this gives me that nice smoke effect coming from the back of him. So that's nice. That looks good, right? But there are still issues here. He's not fading. If we look at his shoulder right here, this shoulder is very harsh in this line. And to make this look natural, we need to fix this shoulder too. So we've currently painted white on our black layer mask. Now I want to go to my white layer mask, the mask on the actual model, and this time I want to paint black. So by painting black, I'm going to get a slightly smaller brush, and I'm going to double click, maybe triple click right here on the edge of him so that he looks faded into it as well. Now I can repeat brushes a little bit here, but don't go too crazy. You do want to change them up as you go to avoid that repeating pattern. I'm at about 400 or 500, maybe upwards of 1,000 on the size of this brush. I'm going to angle it again, and I'm just going to give it a few clicks. So my goal is to make it so that you can't tell where he ends and where that smoke begins. We want to have a nice fade on this guy. So as you're working with it, make sure that you don't see a solid line anywhere on this edge. And that'll give it a nice fade, like he's turning into that smoke. So it gives all kinds of different looks, right? So if we wanted to, we could do this with other brushes. It doesn't have to be just this brush. So doing this smoke look gives us a little smoky effect to it. But doing different looks will give us different feels, right? So instead of doing smoke, what if I did like a splatter brush? You can see I get a much different look. So playing around with your brushes, creating different looks in different ways using these layer masks really helps build your overall look and makes your looks much more unique to what you're doing. So layer masks are black and white, right? There are some grays in there that you can utilize, but how they look and how they're masking is entirely up to you. And utilizing your brushes helps create that unique look that you may want. Now, one thing I like to do to kind of finalize my overall look is I like to add an adjustment layer called photo filter over top. So if you will, click on model and then go to the photo filter option. Now the photo filter gives you a lot of different options for what you want to do. The main filters are up here and you can kind of click through these to see what they do. They're going to apply a color over top of your overall look. So if I want kind of a blue feel to this, I can pop up my density to give it that blue feel. I can move down to cyan, I can move to yellow, I can make it look red, and it gives it a much different, more unified look to what you were trying to do. You can also pick your own color. So if you click on color, you can come in here and kind of pick the color that you want it to be to give it the look you want it to have. So I want you to play with that a little bit, put your own filter on top, and then that's the basics of what we're trying to do today. So just to go back over, what we've talked about are our brushes, how our brushes can be utilized with our layer masks, and how we can take those layer masks from plain, boring things that are just covering parts of your image and turn them into much more detailed and interesting looks along the way. We've installed brushes today. We've played around with the black and whites inside that layer mask. We've duplicated and added adjustment layers today. So this is all just part of building up that overall toolbox so that you can build the house one day. So that's your daily dose of design. I hope this helped you. If you like this tutorial, please feel free to like or subscribe to the channel. I appreciate it. See you in the next one.